Dear cynics and romantics, my name is Monice, and you are listening to the Romantic Cynic podcast. On this episode, I wanted to talk about different types of love. More specifically, according to Sternberg's triangular theory of love, which is made up of three components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. So I hope you join me on today's episode, where we might mix in some laughter, maybe some tears, romance, and of course some cynicism. Welcome to episode 29. What I'm about to say might be somewhat controversial, or maybe it's flat out not true. But I can only speak to my personal experiences and from conversations I've had with friends, family, acquaintances at times, and things that I pay attention to on a day-to-day basis, be it going to a restaurant and people watching, going to a store, things like that where couples are being couples. They're going out and maybe they're having a good time or they're just having dinner together. But from my perspective and what I see every day, I feel like all of us at some point want to experience true love. Love that I feel sometimes is incredibly rare. Sometimes not all of us find it, and it could be for a variety of different reasons. Maybe it's because someone just doesn't feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable to another person in order to experience that type of love. Maybe sometimes because people think that that's not the type of relationship they want, that's not the type of love that they want. Maybe they prefer polyamorous relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's never any judgment of what type of love that you want to experience for yourself, in this lifetime. But I feel as if all of us would want to experience true love. I know I can speak for myself, and that's something that I know I've always wanted, and I'm very fortunate to be able to live that. But going back to the different types of love, there is a psychologist named Robert Sternberg. He developed a theory in the 80s and 90s called the triangular theory of love, which identifies three main components of love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Each one of the three encompasses different emotions, with all three resulting in what Sternberg calls complete or consummate love, or some people call true love. In his original paper, he analyzes the works of Freud and other well-known psychologists to come up with his own theory. And so he had made a quote about his theory because it was based on his own experiences, and this is what he said. He says, "I was at a point in my life in which a relationship I was in was not going all so well. I thought about different relationships, and I had been in and came to the conclusion that there were three elements that dominated relationships, at least in terms of love." And as a matter of fact, with this theory, this was actually also proved universal through research on over 7,300 people across 25 different countries. So this is a theory that is talked about. This is a theory that has really been universally accepted from different countries. So just to kind of go over the three components of love within Sternberg's triangular theory of love. And so some of the things that I'm reading right now are direct quotes from him. And I don't like misquoting anyone, so if I look like I'm reading, it's because I am. So the first one is intimacy. So the closeness each partner feels to the other and the strength of the bond that binds them together. Partners high in intimacy value and understand their partners. So what that means is it's a friendship element, a type of friendship and trust and respect element. The second theory is based on romantic feelings, so physical attraction and sexual intimacy with the partner. So, you can be attracted to someone physically attracted to someone based on maybe the way they look. Maybe they are the ideal image of what a perfect 10 looks like. Maybe that they're intellectually stimulating and they can keep up with you intellectually. I know in my previous relationship, which I typically usually give some type of experience on every one of these episodes. My ex-husband couldn't keep up with me intellectually, and this is not me saying that I thought I was better than him. This is not me saying that I think he was not the most intelligent person. This is not what I'm saying at all. It's just I just have a very high level of intellect where I can have deep conversations with people because I used to read quite a bit in school and things like that. I don't read as much as I used to and I would like to, but there's a lot of other things I want to spend my time on. And sometimes reading isn't always a priority for me, but I do like to read like a good book, especially when it comes to relationships. I like psychology books a lot, so I tend to focus more on those type of topics at hand. I digress a little bit, but you know, if you are passionate about someone because of their intellectual stimulation, that can bring on a passionate relationship between two people, or maybe because you find them, funny at that the fact that they can make you laugh and you can make them laugh. I know sometimes humor is super important in some relationships. I know for me, I like to laugh a lot because it's the type of household I was raised in. So being able to laugh within a relationship is, something that's kind of important to me. And then, of course, the last element is commitment. So commitment represents a cognitive factor such as acknowledging that one is in love and committed to maintaining the relationship. So to delve in, that was just a quick, brief overview of each of the three components. So I want to go into a little bit more detail about the three. So with intimacy, so it says the first one, according to Sternberg, defines the intimacy component of love as feelings of closeness, connectedness, and bondness in loving relationships, including those feelings that give rise essentially to the experience of warmth in a loving relationship, but not exclusively deriving from emotional investment in the relationship. Intimacy in a relationship deals with how close, connected, and trusting one feels towards the other. It also deals with communication, and namely how well you can do it. Overall, it's about feelings of closeness and connection and how intimate and tied to the other person one feels. The intimacy component typically remains stable over time and is somewhat able to be controlled, and people's awareness of it tends to fluctuate, meaning that sometimes people are aware of these types of feelings towards the others, but sometimes they are not aware that they are experiencing intimate feelings. So if you really want to look just as an example solely of intimacy, we can always think of friendships. Friendships are, really good friendships, close friendships, intimate friendships, best friendships are based on communication. How well you communicate together. Trust. There has to be a certain level of trust and reciprocity between the two. And the last one is respect. I believe that those three really make up of the really good best friendship factor. It also brings about intimacy, because I think if you are missing one of those three elements, the intimacy isn't really there, or maybe it's just the intimacy is there for one person but not necessarily the other person. So reciprocity, and not because you're trying to do it because you expect the other person to do it, but you're genuinely giving them those three components of communication, of strong, good communication, trust with one another, and of course respect. And so I think intimacy, you have to have all three of those to have really successful intimacy between two people. Passion. So Sternberg defines the passion component as the drive component of love as the drive that leads to romance, physical attraction, sexual consummation, and related phenomena in loving relationships, including those sources of motivational and other forms of arousal that lead to the experience of passion in a loving relationship, and deriving largely, although not exclusively, from motivational involvement in the relationship. So, passion, as you might guess, is about the passionate part of the relationship. So, it encompasses how excited one gets thinking about the person that they are in love with, and how excited they are to be with them, and how much one feels one absolutely needs their partner or their love interest. When you feel those electrifying currents of emotion, so passion really drives like the sexual part of the relationship, and sometimes that's all someone wants is just the physicality, or that's what they thrive off of. Unfortunately, with the passion component, it's not sustainable. It can become very exhausting through time, because if that's all you have to go with, someone might get bored, or someone will continue to maybe seek out that passion level, because the passion itself, the newness of touch, can be so addicting to some people. So the passion part is very difficult to sustain over time. But, it's something that usually drives us into those romantic relationships, even if it's like those one night stands, because it's all about the passion and in the moment. The third element, which is commitment. So finally, Sternberg defines defines commitment component of love as, in the short term, the decision that one loves someone else, and in the long term, the commitment to maintain the love. And it's the only one of the three that's conscious or intentional. There is a decision component to this in the short term, which leads to long-term commitment. So he also describes it as the level at which one says, "This is it. I don't need to keep looking," and chooses to continue the partnership. Commitment, in my opinion, is something that can be very difficult to maintain. And what I mean by that is the fact that we as humans have so many different distractions in modern society. We have, I've talked about, there's the Instagram models, there's the TikTok sensational people that are just absolutely beautiful. One part of that is, the filtering. There's so many filters available on all these on TikTok and Instagram. So on all these social media, where it's like, you go from looking, quote unquote, the average person, you turn a filter on, and all of a sudden you're absolutely gorgeous, stunning, to complete symmetry of your face. I think there's something about the golden rule of symmetry. I can talk about that in a different episode, but that one is actually pretty fascinating, to the golden rule that makes someone very attractive to the human eye. But commitment, I feel, it can be very difficult to maintain or to fully have. You can be committed to someone because maybe you invested so much time into that person. Maybe the simple fact that, you have been married for 20 plus years, and so you're just kind of committed, even though maybe you don't feel passion or intimacy, but you're committed to each other for whatever reason. There could be a number of reasons why you're committed. Doesn't necessarily mean that that love exists within that relationship, but you're committed to one another. And so I think commitment really has to, when you're looking at commitment, there's many different levels. It's not just being physically committed to someone. I think it's also mentally being committed to someone, emotionally committed to someone, things that won't make you sway from your partner. I think if you have experienced, being in a relationship with someone, or maybe you're in a relationship now where you are fully 100% committed, and you feel like, hey, I don't have to search any longer because this is the person that I'm super focused on, and all other people outside of your relationship don't exist from a sexual point of view. They don't exist from, hey, this is the next best thing, or the what's the common quote? Oh, it's the things that are there's something greener on the other side. This is the relationship that you are committed to, and this is the relationship that you want because you feel as if this is the person that you are meant to spend the rest of your life with, and what an amazing feeling to kind of have that feeling. So with all three elements, there are some intersections when you combined, two of them, and of course, when you combine all three, they make up different types of relationships. With this one, there's according to Sternberg's theory, there are 8 different types of love. So the first one is called non-love. So this first type of love introduces the first type is the non-love, which is when none of the 3 components of love are present in a relationship. Non-love can be seen in the casual interactions in our everyday lives, everyday lives of, just talking to someone as an acquaintance or a friend. There's non-love there, but that's still some type of form of relationship. These relationships and interactions contain a complete lack of love, as none of the components of love are involved. This makes sense, as some people would typically express any sort of feelings of love for any brief encounter in their lives. So, the non-love. The next component is called liking, also called the friendship. So this one is all about the intimacy component. That's all that exists. The other 2 don't exist, but just intimacy is present in a relationship. But the passion and commitment components are not there. So again, this goes back to the friendship element of the relationship. The third type is called infatuation. So this one is when the passion component of love is present in a relationship, but the intimacy and commitment components are not. So this is where you would think of, love at first sight. And how your psychophysiological arousal is manifested into being completely just attracted to this person, and that's all it is. It's infatuation. They're very short-lived. Infatuation, I believe, can turn into love and can turn into a committed to relationship, but infatuation is what really kind of happens really quickly. You might have spotted someone across the room at a bar or maybe at a bookstore, and you're just immediately attracted to them for whatever reason. And that relationship develops exceedingly fast, but it's all based typically on just the passion part. And again, that fizzles out pretty quickly because I feel as if being able to maintain 100% passion for another person at a very high level is unsustainable. It's something. It's exhausting. It has to be exhausting for a person. So that sometimes what will happen is that will either fizzle out, and all of a sudden, the infatuation that you felt is no longer there, and you just become friends, or you just become enemies or strangers to one another. So the next one is called empty love, and that is based solely on the commitment component. So this type of love can be commonly found in some long-term relationships when the couple has lost feelings for one another. And so I think the example that I read was, you are in a committed relationship. There's no intimacy, there's no passion, but you look like roommates. You kind of just live together, and from a roommate point of view. And so with me in my previous relationship, my marriage, I can say that was ours. We looked like roommates. We acted like roommates. There was things that we couldn't even do as a couple because he just didn't want any of those things. And so our relationship really just became, well, we're just here and we're kind of committed to each other, and that's it. There's nothing else to go with that. And so it was definitely more of that roommate type of feel. And with me, I couldn't live that type of life with someone anymore, just because I didn't want the lack of the other 2 components. So that is my example of empty love. So the next one is romantic love. So this is when you combine both intimacy and passion, but commitment is not there. So this kind of love can also be thought of as liking with an added element, namely the arousal brought about by physical attraction and its non-commitments. So with this one, their example is a Romeo and Juliet. They have this very romantic love, and they'll do anything to be together. And if you've read it, I hope you understand the romantic element of the relationship. And if you have never read Romeo and Juliet, by William Shakespeare, I would read it. It's a great play. And if you don't want to have time to read it, then I would watch. I liked the version with Leonardo DiCaprio and, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the actress's name. But if you haven't seen or read Romeo and Juliet, watch the Romeo and Juliet version with Leonardo DiCaprio. I know I liked it when I was younger. The next kind of love is companionate love. So this is the sixth type, and this is when intimacy and commitment are present and passion is not. So this is a long-term committed friendship, the kind that frequently occurs in marriages in which the physical attraction has died. Because marriages typically involve large amounts of intimacy, commitment, components of love, they can often become forms of companionate love when the spark or the passion in the relationship is lost. The seventh type of love is called fatuous love, in which passion and commitment components are present in the relationship, but the intimacy level is not there. So fatuous love is the kind of love we sometimes associate with Hollywood or with whirlwind courtships, in which a couple meets on a day, gets engaged 2 weeks later, and then marries the next month, where a commitment is made on the basis of passion without stabilizing element of intimate involvement. So this is, they talk about the whirlwind love, where it happens so fast, you make all these decisions very quickly without having, your heart is leading everything that you do. It's not necessarily your head leading, sometimes you're not critically thinking, you're not thinking in a clear-headed manner where you just make all these decisions, and then all of a sudden you end up married to this person, or you find yourself in a long-term relationship with this person, but you didn't take the time to get to know one another at a friendship level. You didn't build the intimacy. And sometimes the intimacy, I feel, in a lot of relationships is missing. I think that's when, you hear about, someone stepping out on the other person. This is when you hear about, maybe, your partner is liking other people, or they're direct, DMing other people through Instagram or any other social media websites, where because that person is seeking out intimacy, because the intimacy either fizzled out for whatever reason, or it was never established at the very beginning of the relationship. I feel like, in my previous relationship, I've mentioned in other episodes where I didn't like my ex-husband because I didn't get to know him as a person. I thought he was a good person when it came to other people. I didn't like how he was and how he treated me as a person in our relationship. I was more like property than a partner. And with our relationship, it just didn't work that way because the intimacy factor wasn't there. And I think that a lot of people are in this type of relationship where, because there's no intimacy, they seek out intimacy outside of the relationship versus, seeking it within for whatever reason. And sometimes it could just be bitterness. Sometimes the other person is just so negative, for a negative person. But at that times, sometimes it could be because you put so much commitment and time and investment into the relationship, you decide to either, continue where it's at and just seek out intimacy outside of that relationship, which is unfortunate because I feel like a lot of relationships are that way for a variety of reasons, because there's this whirlwind of love. And I think a problem with that is, because we live in a society where there's instant gratification. Like we have to have it right now, right then and there, and we can't wait for it. We don't allow it to evolve over time for whatever reason, because again, we just want it right now because it satisfies us in the moment. And I think a lot of relationships are like that, unfortunately. And then of course the last one, which is the one that I think all of us really want to seek and have on a day-to-day basis, is the consummate love, or the true love. And so this one has all three elements. So this has intimacy, this has passion, and this has commitment towards one another. You know, nowadays, one thinks of love, they are most likely thinking about consummate love. Additionally, and again, this is all quoted from Sternberg, additionally, consummate love is seemingly the type of love that most people aim to find. Outside of romantic relationships, an example of consummate love can be found in many parents. So having unconditional love towards your children, towards one's children. Consummate love is the hardest, I believe, to maintain, because I feel like consummate love takes work, and not like tiring work, but it takes work between two people to maintain the intimacy, to maintain the passion, to maintain the commitment towards one another. And I think that when you are working together, when you're working with all three of those in a relationship and you're working to maintain them, it doesn't feel, if it's really true love, I feel as if it's not hard work. It does feel like work sometimes, because maybe you are in a situation where you're facing adversity together, but you come together as a team and you work through it because you're communicating, because you respect one another, because you have trust and belief and faith in one another. And the consummate love, that's the love that I believe everyone should seek out. That's the type of love that we should all strive for. And I believe that a big part of us, a lot of us have to learn to be incredibly patient and not jump into relationships so fast and really get to know a person. I feel like in order to truly achieve consummate love, true love, you have to get to know the person first. I think friendship really is going to be the deciding factor of what type of love you have, especially if you want the consummate love. I believe that you have to get to know the person on so many different levels and build that intimacy, because that friendship can always turn into passionate love, can always turn into, the three elements of commitment, intimacy, and passion for the other person. And I feel like that's the type of love that we should all strive for. So I hope you found some insight on my episode today. And of course, I always want to close my episode with a quote. And this is a quote from Aman Arayan Mohanty. And they say, "True love isn't easy, but it must be fought for, because once you find it, it can never be replaced." Thank you for listening. And as always, yours truly, the Romantic Cynic.